In a recent discussion, we looked at Texas law and the severe penalties for people convicted of crimes against children, and now we're going to take a closer look at the duty to report such crimes to the authorities. The Daystar television network, led by Joni Lamb, has admitted that an internal investigation was conducted after an allegation of SA against a child. The Roy's report said the ministry cited an investigation that allegedly settled the matter. Daystar said, there was an internal investigation when it was first raised at a family retreat, which concluded with no wrongdoing found, nor evidence provided that corroborated the allegation. Although Daystar made the statement, it was not entirely clear if the network had done the internal investigation as a business inquiry or if it had been led by Joni Lamb as a family decision. But Daystar framed the discussion as a private family matter which should not have been made public. It was also not clear if an alleged crime had been committed on company property or by one of its employees. It is undisputed that there was a personal allegation and a private investigation, but is this legally sufficient? The Texas Department of Family and Protective Services says, Texas requires any person suspecting a child has been violated must immediately make a report. They provide a link on their website to file the report online, but when the child is 5 years or younger, an urgent report is required, and you need to make a phone call. Texas does not say you can do an internal investigation whenever you get around to it, and whenever you get to finishing it, then you can tell the authorities. Child Protective Services specifically says, it is important to make the report as soon as possible, because the more time that passes between the incident and your report, the more difficult it is for CPS to conduct an appropriate and full investigation. Delaying your report to check the situation or to gather more information can result in more serious harm to the child. The Roy's report says the girl's mother said she immediately called Joni and shared her 5-year-old daughter's allegation. Did Joni report this to the authorities as soon as she heard it? She would have wanted to discuss it first with her husband Marcus Lamb, who at the time was Daystar's president and CEO. As his wife and business partner, she had a duty to report to him anything that could cause a family business crisis, so let's assume for the sake of discussion, she told him immediately and they talked about it. Marcus in turn, upon learning the allegation, calls his attorney and asks for a legal opinion. He leads an international ministry and needs counsel on a major decision, so the attorney clearly communicates the legal exposure not only to the company, but also personally to him and Joni. The senior attorney of a multi-million-dollar Christian business in Texas is not going to advise his client to forget about the law and just do an internal investigation. That is not a legal option. He is not going to say, hire your own private investigators and family therapists, then get the suspect to do a lie detector test. He will not advise you to pray and ask God if anyone committed a crime. There is no legal basis under Texas law for spiritual discernment to form legal conclusions. There are no exceptions to the law, such as you don't have to report the crime if you work at a church, ministry, or Christian business. You can't even get an exemption if you're unsure a crime was committed. The statute does not say you must be a witness. You only need to have a suspicion, you don't need confirmation or evidence. You can't get out of it by saying you don't have probable cause, because the law says the standard is reasonable cause, and that's a very low bar. It basically means just a reason, and if a child makes an allegation, that should be enough, and it is. A Texas court concluded the duty to report the violation of a child is sweeping, and makes no exceptions for clergy, physicians, mental health professionals, or teachers. But Texas went further than most states and decided even attorneys are not allowed to hide family secrets about kids. The Texas bar informed attorneys across the state with the following comments. Texas reporting statute creates a clear disclosure requirement where an attorney obtains information that otherwise would be protected by the ethical confidentiality principle. Put another way, the command that a lawyer keep information confidential as part of the rules of professional responsibility may not supersede the mandatory legal duty to report. Other professionals besides attorneys who hear secrets about children include polygraph examiners. In 1999, the Texas Polygraph Examiners Board asked the Texas Attorney General a basic legal question. Do we have to tell anyone what we learn about children when we do lie detector tests? In his legal opinion, the general was very clear. The polygraph examiner's statutes forbid an examiner to disclose information gained from an examination. But the family code requires a person who believes that a child has been violated to immediately report the information to the appropriate authorities. If a polygraph examiner learns, during the course of an examination, that a child has been violated, the examiner must report the information. The doctor who hears of a violation from a patient, the therapist who uncovers it during a session, and the teacher who learns it from a student, all have the same responsibility. If it's a priest who hears a confession, an attorney who reads an admission, or a polygraph examiner who hears the test result, the duty is the same: report the crime. But Texas went even further and decided the duty to report is not limited to professionals. Anyone who suspects a crime against a child must report it. We live in a day and age where people, when they see or hear about crimes, do not want to get involved. There is not an extremely high sense of duty and personal responsibility as people turn a blind eye. It seems there are not enough good Samaritans. If there is a problem, it is somebody else's problem. So if something happens to a child, it's not my kid, so it is not my responsibility. But Texas says if you see something, you have to say something. Texas statutes are clearly on the child's side, and lawmakers have closed the legal loopholes that could allow adults to ignore crimes and not accept responsibility or be irresponsible. Every child is a priority, and every citizen has a responsibility to protect children. It makes no difference if you are a parent, a family member, a relative, or an acquaintance. It doesn't matter if you have never met the child or don't even know the child's name. Whether you have some obvious responsibility towards the child is also beside the point. The point is a very young and vulnerable person has a right to health and safety, and you have a duty to report. In her video statement reacting to the current Daystar scandal, Joni Lamb did not say that she had reported the possible crime against her granddaughter to the authorities as soon as she heard it. So the question everyone is still waiting for her to answer is, did you report it immediately? To be clear, we're not accusing her of committing a crime, but we are waiting for her statement on this. We don't know if she made the call or not, but if she admits she did not make it, or refuses to answer the question, the discussion will shift to resignation. A CEO can be terminated for various reasons, including ethical misconduct. Failure to report a suspected crime against a child immediately is a violation of state law. Breaking the law is certainly justification in most corporate environments for dismissal. A Texas law firm issued the following warning. Failing to report suspected violations of children can have serious legal and ethical consequences. Under Texas Family Code, a person who fails to report can face criminal charges. This is classified as a Class A misdemeanor, which can include up to 1 year of incarceration. In some cases, if a failure to report leads to further harm or injury to a child, the individual who failed to report might also face civil lawsuits for damages resulting from negligence. If someone were to be charged with not reporting a crime against a child quickly, the legal defense would be limited to only a few issues, because the statute is so basic and has very few qualifiers. The statute says a report is required when a person has reasonable cause to believe that a child's physical or mental health or welfare has been adversely affected. Therefore, the defendant would have to claim either she was unaware the child had been violated, or she had no reason to believe a crime had been committed. In Joni's case, however, she has already essentially conceded both points, because Daystar said there was an internal investigation. Obviously, you don't investigate if no offense has been suspected, and if you start that investigation, you had a reasonable cause to believe the little girl had been adversely affected. Simply put, the entire premise of an internal investigation is you suspect the girl was harmed but you don't know for sure. Thus, having already conceded she had indeed met the legal burden of a person who had a duty to report, because she suspected a child had been harmed, her only remaining legal defense option would be to claim that she thought somebody else was going to report it. In other words, Joni could concede, yes, I admit that I had been informed about the allegation, and I agree that I had reason to believe my granddaughter had been adversely affected, so of course I had a duty to report it immediately, but somebody else said they were going to report it, so I didn't. But the testimony of the child's mother, as revealed in the Roy's report, is that she and her husband reported the crime to the authorities secretly. They did not tell Joni at the time, so Joni can't say she did not report the allegation because Susie told her she would call the police. And who else would have known about the situation that Joni trusted to call them, if not the child's own mother? So at this point, to mount anything remotely near a credible legal defense, Joni would have to produce an email, text message, or audio recording of somebody else saying they were going to contact the authorities, in her place, absolving her of all responsibility. It was surprising that Daystar's attorneys approved the public relations message in which Daystar conceded an internal investigation had been initiated and completed, because even though it was intended to help Daystar's public image, it undermined Joni personally. She now has a much more difficult task ahead of her in the event she is ever indicted for failure to report a crime against a child. To avert yet another international public relations nightmare, Daystar's board of directors should immediately ask Joni to produce the evidence, proving another person agreed to report the suspected crime. If she cannot do that, they need to start talking about her termination.